Hello, everyone. This is me, Chris, and George, our weekly encounter. This morning, my morning, Chris is going to show us a game from the U.S. Pro Qualifier, which is kind of an exciting thing. And along the way, I'll be asking questions, and George may well ask questions, and we'll go like that. Okay, Chris, it's on you.
Awesome. So there's not really much to say about the first four opening moves. They play pretty much symmetric across the board. One thing that I've noticed is pretty interesting about Guan Yu in particular is he tends to play people during the tournament were dubbing him as the mimic Go player. He very often will employ his opponent's own style against them. So when you play against Guan Yu, you feel like you're playing against yourself. So in the previous sort of games Guan Yu played, when he paired up against Tian Yi and he paired up against, I think, Sen Zhou, he might not have played Sen yet. That might be in different brackets. But when he paired up against Tian Yi, and the game, like Tian Yi tried to make the game very complicated and very fighty, Guan Yu leaned into the same thing and played a very complicated fighting game against him and managed to win. In this game, he employs Bill Lin's own style against him. Bill, very well known for being a very solid and methodical player. Doesn't generally tend to play the complicated or crazy moves. He tends to try to keep things simple and balanced. And we're going to get to see what that looks like when a 7-dan and an 8-dan do that.
Okay.
So right now, Black, following opening principle, play in the unfinished corners. So you could choose to approach, you could choose to enclose. He chose to approach, and Bill played the most solid corner response, which is this very thick diagonal. For those that might wonder what exactly is this move for, diagonals tend to be very good when you can pressure things that happen on both sides. So if white can do work at A, white can do work at B, it's generally a good move. If one of those directions is not really open to doing work, then it loses a bit of its value, it becomes a bit slow. But on this board, okay, white can contest some of the B area with black, and the pincer at A for white would be quite nice, so black takes that away. And then white switches back to the opening. There's nothing to attack with the diagonal at the left yet, so white is playing away from that area, sort of inviting black to approach close to this thickness so that white can start an attack against black's stones.
Let me ask a question right there. Instead of P3, would we say that C6 is a wrong direction?
I don't know about wrong in the sense of direction. It's certainly a playable move. You're trying to see if black will pincer, give you a stone on the left that you can bother in the fight. So if that's sort of your style, you want to get to fighting quickly, I think you can choose it. Size-wise, compared to A, B is generally considered to be a bit smaller. The star point is a bit more difficult to press in two moves compared to the 3-4 point.
Okay, so unfinished corner versus approaching a fin. Okay.
Yeah, like B would have some strategic implication if white did play it. White would be telegraphing, hey, let's start a fight on the left side where I'm prepared with my Kosumi and I can get a good advantage. Probably if white did play B, black is going to back off and not accept white's invitation, because black would prefer white to play something like this and pacify the left side. And then later in the future, black would aim to press it as opposed to jump in and give white some attack, right? Where if we have to make something like this, white is getting all this benefit, and then, you know, black is, black is not necessarily alive, right? This kind of thing would be very bad. So black would play to avoid that naturally. This would be an easy way for black.
And also white's playing on the side, giving black the corner down at A. Yeah. Okay, so this makes more sense. Good.
Yeah. And then the first sort of interesting choice, and this is also a move I've played around with recently. This two-space high pincer was really popular in the 90s, early 2000s. It sort of fell out of popularity circa 2015 during the AI opening revolution of Go. Typically, AI is going to prefer to play like A or B or C. But we almost never see it choose the two-space high these days. The reason that I've been choosing it is much more nefarious. Those people from back in the day will probably know the Joseki by the name of the Magic Sword. This is one of the modern variations that transpose into the Magic Sword Joseki, which tends to be incredibly complicated and full of tactics.
Yeah.
Black is not so much going for that. Black is looking for balance with the A stone, so black is choosing a slightly wider pincer. Realistically, you can play any of them. It almost doesn't matter. White chooses the most common move nowadays. We've learned with AI that the press is almost always easy for white and such moves. This one can actually lead to more complications than pressing because the sequences are much less forced. And instead of crawling, which would be submissive, black chooses to cut.
Yeah.
Now here,
a lot of viewers or some viewers might not be too aware that before AI, if you're 3-dan on up, you're having to learn horribly complex Josekis.
oh yeah,
variation after variation. Well, what if he does that? Well, then we go to this other counter.
And you can see
was
like
horrible.
You can see the whole progression too, because it's like when you're a double-digit, single-digit queue, you learn, oh, just jump, right? Like just get out, and then your opponent's going to play knight's move, and then maybe you push a couple times, and then you can either go above or you can slide below. Like you learn that type of thing, and then when you get to like the high SDK low dan, you learn, okay, I can go a little faster, and my opponent can play this one or this one. And then you get to 3-dan, and then all of your opponents are playing this mess.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you get to 7-dan, and then the 7-dan players hit you with something like this. And
oh
like,
my
what
God,
does this
horrible.
attachment mean? And then it's like, oh, I'm gonna Hane, and then they go, what about this one? And you're like, I'm gonna Hane, and then they cross cut. It's like, what is this mess? And you have to know all of these.
You have to know all of them. It was horrible.
Yeah. Nowadays, this one's much more simple because your opponent really only has two choices. They submit and they give you the cover, which is if black plays like this, white's going to push usually 2 times and then cap. This type of cap is protecting our knight's move. Just for those that are wondering, it's much harder for black to try to push and cut now. And the peep against the cut doesn't give black a lot of leverage anymore. So for example, push, block, peep, cut, black comes in, we are prepared to catch. So that's really the meaning of that one. Or you can play the more classic variations, which are like pinch and counter pinch, reapproach to start a big fight. That's considered the simple variation. And then there's the cut, which is the forced one. Up until now, it's all standard. And then white basically has 3 choices. You can play A, start a fight. You can play B, settle quickly. Or you can play C, which is the old school move. The AI says C loses a point, but it was the local Pesugi and most popular Joseki for a very long time. It's probably the easiest of the 3 variations to play. Yeah. 1 point at the human level is not really worth much. Bill agreed. And
so viewers, Chris is doing his thing now, right? He's going off mile a minute with all this stuff.
Yeah.
Now again, before AI, we had to know all this. Since AI, it's like, oh, the opening's gotten so simple. Everyone's playing at a professional 9-dan level in the opening now. I mean, it's become simple, which is pleasant, but I found I kind of resent it. Like, hey, buddy, I put in all this work and not for nothing, you know?
Yeah, but there are still ways that you can sort of trick people. Not that trick is the right word, but like I mentioned, if white goes here, what is this Joseki? We've now entered into the Magic Sword via transposition. So this can become a really complicated Joseki. So some of the old preparation can still apply, but yeah, like a lot of the figuring stuff out on the fly is kind of gone. Everyone has, you know, Ishida Yoshio Joseki dictionary at their fingertips with Katago. So if white wanted to play a complicated game, white would do the AI method of A and B. These are very, very sharp lines that require a lot of reading or preparation ahead of time to really know what you're doing with them. They're not mistakes. They're usually the most optimal moves. Bill chooses to keep it simple. He plays the old Joseki. This one is simply offering a trade. White, basically black is gonna damage. Whoops, I need to get my label tool. Black is gonna damage the A stone. White is gonna capture the B stone, and white is saying, okay, black might be slightly better locally, but the result is even enough for me that I can avoid whatever preparation black has in this mess. And, 1 point at our level is not going to make a difference from the opening.
Right.
So we get the simplified trait. Guan Yu takes Q5 with no resistance, and white damages M4. It's very, very important to recognize A is completely captured and B is not captured yet. Many strong players will say white is capturing the B stone with this just because black's probably never going to invest a move directly to save it. But there is considerably more Aji with black B than white A.
Right.
So it's like B we can consider captured, but there's an asterisk there. The method in which white takes the stone is going to be very important. And it's a question that will often come up later. So now, what to do on this type of board? If I'm black, I'm going after the C stone. I have strong position here. I have strong position here. The C stone is isolated, so I can play an opening move that has a little bit of additional value, and that white's development directions are already occupied by black stones. Guan Yu takes a different approach and decides to attack the white thickness. And while AI doesn't necessarily disagree with this type of move, I don't think I would consider this one correct direction.
Yeah, that's not a regular opening move. I mean, heck, there's corners, and we're not playing in the corners. Yeah, pretty unusual.
Right. So we might chuck this up to stylistic type of thing. Maybe he's playing the one stone because he wants to probe white's thickness and see how white wants to handle the left side. But if we're looking at the game purely from the opening theory perspective, I think like either approaching here to develop the R7 group to the side, or maybe even the 3-3, because white doesn't necessarily have a great direction, look more attractive to me. And that just means, just for those that are wondering, like if black takes the corner, white can extend, but how far can white go really when black is strong in the corner?
Yeah.
It's a bit concentrated. And if white blocks the other way, it's even worse. Because even though this one looks like we're attacking, the minute black defends the corner, now this stone has a bit overextended feeling.
Yeah.
Black is going to be aiming for like any of the pincers inside, and white's going to have to sort of come back to cover the Aji later. So I would prefer to play at the right-hand side, top right corner. I think that's correct direction. But Guan Yu chooses C12. I can't say it's a mistake, but from the opening theory perspective, it's a bit wrong direction.
Something I've noticed, or I should say I used to notice, that strong players, 6, 7, 8 dons, would do something like that C12 on purpose, knowing it wasn't best. It's kind of like, let's start an early fight.
Yeah.
I'm going to outfight you. They're like making a claim. It's like, yeah, but that's not best. And they're like, there's no such thing as best.
Yeah. So there's a popular sort of phrase that goes along with that mindset, and that's overplay is better than Tesuji if not properly punished. So a lot of the idea is, well, if we're both 6, 7, 8 don, we don't have perfect reading. You could ignore me and take the best move, but if I fight better than you, then it didn't matter. Right. And so they can rely on this claim. And then if they lose the game, it's like, okay, he just fought better than me. Right. It's not because I didn't play the best move. It's because my opponent was a better fighter and I just improved my fighting. And, that's their style. They like to play the most confrontational, aggressive moves at a given point in time. And everything is always a question. Nothing is ever certain with players like this. Which is aggravating for the principled player, because you know what the correct move is. You see what they should be playing. They never play it. And then if you lose the game, you feel bad about it.
Yeah.
But really, you shouldn't feel too bad. A lot of the time, just don't give them the game they want and they fall apart quickly. Even at the high levels, trading skill becomes really good in that case. Yeah. And so here we see white ignoring the top right corner also, which surprised me, because I thought during the game when this move lands, I was like, oh, for sure Bill's going to enclose. There's like no reason why it doesn't enclose here. It's so big. And then Bill played this move, sort of checking the black corner and checking the C12 stone. I'm like, okay, tactically it makes sense. Again, it's not the biggest.
Control for a second,
but
I have a couple things I'm curious about.
Sure.
Okay. So when I think about what to do on this board,
Mhm.
my first question is, is there something critical about the A stones? And I'm like, I can imagine some punishment, but I mean, I'll be okay for now.
Mhm.
So it doesn't seem urgent. On the
Mhm.
other hand, is this too slow? Look,
A bit. I don't know if I would call it slow. Slack might be a better word. I feel like white is taking 2 moves to claim the corner. Every move we spend in the corner is worth less than the last. And even though white is now thick and capable of attacking the left side stone, it's 1 stone and quite light. So if black is looking at the trade like, okay, I'm getting 1 stone to occupy the left, and it's going to force white to commit 2 more moves to the corner, then I think black is happy in that result.
While here I'm doing much more work with this 1 stone than I am doing with these multiple stones.
Right.
Okay. Next, I was going to ask, and I'm glad you pointed out. I'm like, well, is playing away okay? Yeah, playing away is okay. Okay, next, I'm noticing that M4 stone we're talking about is this direction of play, because we have a wall there to work with and a stone to get rid of.
So it can be, but it's tricky. Because the M stone 4 is so hard to capture directly. The Atari would require a ladder to be working, and in general, surrounding from the center, black can just try to loosely save from the middle and not actually commit to saving it. This direction would typically be considered a bit concentrated for white at the bottom. White's going to end up playing a lot of defense to keep that area.
I see. Since that Aji stone is going to stop us from taking the bottom, so why am I trying to develop the bottom like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. That was good.
Chris, at that point, after white d2, what would you play if black would try to push through it e4?
If black tried to push through at e4 in that shape, I mean, I would block and just give up the stone.
Yeah.
And develop the corner.
Sure.
Because now, if the game goes like this and black moves, like black creates a group at L3, like actually creates a group here, it's good for white.
Yeah.
Because white is already going to be strong on both sides.
Yeah.
Both corners, and black is sort of sandwiched between thickness. If black reduces from the center, white just won't answer it. Now any reduction from the middle is gote for black, because white is again strong with both groups. So this type of thing, black is losing initiative near the bottom side, and it's like always white's privilege to like keep pushing at G7 or bother around P7, Q7 on the right hand side to make the bottom bigger. I don't think the push and cut at E4 is really good for black.
Yeah.
Normally, if black wants to play from the corner here towards the bottom, it would be G5. And that would be trying to induce white to play H4 and flatten the bottom side out with 1 exchange.
Yeah.
That would just be a little bit cleaner than trying to give up all that thickness for no reason.
Okay. And that leaves us with this. This is an interesting move.
Yeah, this one is a tactical idea, I think, by Bill. Bill is already in the mindset that, okay, I'm going to give black the next follow-up in the corner, the top left. Black is making an attack. I'm playing away from black's attack. Therefore, black now has the right to follow the attack up. What white is doing with this move is white is looking ahead into the future and saying, okay, if black attacks, let's say C14, and I have to run to the center, what's black on the left going to look like? And is the left-hand side big enough that I should have a stone in there preemptively? His determination was yes, so C6 is preemptive to black's attack with the idea of mitigating black's profit. So not stopping him from getting profit by stopping the attack entirely, white intends to let black attack with 2 stones, but white's claim is that black's attack is going to be a Marigatachi, or attacking for no profit or negative profit.
Okay, let me catch up there. That was a lot. If black attacks our upper left, we already know he's not going to get a lot on top because he has a stupid little group there. There's not much to do there. But on the left, he could grow a very large area. So if we simply exist there healthy, then go ahead and attack me. You're not going to get anything for it. Did I say it right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's a very good idea. Maybe tactic isn't the right word. Maybe it's strategic here in this case. It's very whole board type of thinking, right? Like it's not, white is not focusing on the local group so much. White is focusing on the entire area, the big picture, and white's dealing with the big picture plan.
Yeah.
Now, as we're saying all of this, of course, technically the correct direction is still R14, right? I don't want people at home to get that confused. R14 is the biggest point on the board, like period, in terms of size. Because if white can develop the star point to R14, it's going to be hard for black to use the top group and the right side group to bother that cornerstone for big profit. Black can only bother for small profit. So there's a lot of value there for both players. But they're sort of probing each other at the left-hand side first because there's this fight looming, and they're kind of not really sure how the other person's going to handle it. And so they're taking time away from the biggest move to deal with this small question first before coming back to it. Strong players do this all the time. And you know, where it's like
a probe. It's almost like a probe. I'm just going to ask a question, but this is a long, complex question. Yeah.
Right. And so do you mind if I take the control back? So we can continue? Yeah, and so this is a good sort of, we would consider this like maybe intermezzo, like an in-between move by white. You know, white recognized, okay, there's two big things looming on the board, the attack at 1, the enclosure at 2. Black cannot take both of them. So why don't I play an intermediary move that deals with one of them somewhat directly? And then if black takes one in the knee, I can try to take the other. So it's a good plan by white. And in the game, black chooses this attacking move. We see the attack is coming. Black is making good on his threat. White gets out. This is natural. For those that are wondering, this push and cut exists as a variation for black. But black has to be very, very careful with this type of variation here. Even though it looks like white is maybe very weak, the problem is that black is also not alive on the left or the top. So when white stretches, the fighting is not necessarily going to be good for black.
Okay.
Yeah, it's complicated looking, right? Black's going to extend, but we can see after black's extension.
Lots of complications.
Yeah. This is something that strong players will read, and they'll determine, okay, does the cut work? If the cut works, I can cut. If the cut doesn't work, then you'll see this answer, and this is what we got in the game. Black made the determination that cutting would not be powerful for what black wanted to do. And so black decided to just simplify the position. And all right, everything is, for the most part, settled. White got to lead the top group out to the center. Black has now just defended his 2 stones against a white attack at C10. And the only questions left on the board for white to answer are in relation to A, B, and C. We can use the list for this method. A group is pretty easy to see is going to be okay because it has access to a base in the corner and it's also out in the center. Black cannot destroy both of those directions with one move, so A, for the most part, is fine. The B stone, if we considered this move as a probing move, we can treat the stone like Kakashi. So B is 1 stone that we got value out of by forcing black to pick a direction. And apparently it was not something we intended to. So we could develop the B stone, but we're not obligated to. And then there's the C direction, which is that last big sort of opening point area that we have that question about. Now, in this case, black chose to play a far pincer instead of the tight pincer against the B stone. It's more balanced for defense and attack, and white does have to make the choice. Do I want to commit to developing B now into something else, give it additional work, or do I want it to develop some blue?
Okay, I'm with you.
In the game, Bill chooses to play the simplest local variation and just try to give up the B stone easily and take the territory at the bottom. This decision is impacted in part by Black's M4 stone. For those that are wondering, if White gets a solid living group in the corner, then the M stone loses a lot of its follow-up value for Black. There's nothing to break there anymore. So there's a little bit of looking ahead for White there. But this Joseki inherently does not end in Sente for White. This is a very important detail. Many people know the full pattern, which is this type of thing, and Black can take Sente from now. It's also possible Black can take Sente as early as this. So when White is doing this, White knows White's losing Sente to give up like the big right side area to Black. White's saying the compensation is going to be when Black checks me, I'll just settle and I got points in the corner. It should be roughly even.
Chris, just a second.
Yeah.
What's that?
Don't forget the stove guy.
Okay, thanks. Great. Thank you.
Well, 9 to 11.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no worries. So that being said, I think it's hard to choose what's going to be more correct here between 1 or 2. I like Bill's move at 2, trying to give away the B stone quickly, and get the profit at the corner first with it before Black has a chance to play 2 himself and put a lot of pressure at the B stone. But White can play 1, and White does not really lose any advantage by doing so. 1 is still one of the biggest points on the board in terms of size.
And counter piecing, I guess that's probably too small.
Which one's too small?
If you go back before C3, changing direction.
Oh, F3. F3 or F4. Yeah. Possible. If we're thinking something like this, Black sort of already taking away White's natural extending into A should make this Joseki position, at least in the bottom left corner, locally favorable for Black. It really comes down to a question of whether or not this M4 stone is really going to be a thorn in White's ability to take more of the bottom. My personal opinion is probably it will. The bottom left White corner isn't alive yet. So when Black Hane's at L3, there's actually something for White to do again, or for Black to do against the White corner. So White's going to owe a move. And if White has to come back to play this Atari, it's kind of slow. Black effectively gets to... White doesn't get the follow-up of the C6 stone, and Black effectively stole Sente. Like, this kind of thing feels like, to me, it would be like really painful to deal with as White. So maybe it's possible. Maybe there's like a world where White could reapproach and then maybe slide into the corner and try to get something. But I think if you have the option to play 2 versus 3, and 3 sort of already has a hindrance to it in place by the enemy, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice by choosing the harder direction. 3 is inherently a harder direction.
And Chris, why might White first play 3, wait for the attachment, and then dive into the corner rather than just diving into the corner straight away?
So you could do either. Let's just compare the ending results here. When we get this type of pattern by White, let's just say Tiger's Mouth, and then Black Hane here, White bend up, Black Hane extend, and then Black has like this defending move. This is like one of the results White's aiming to get. You can see the shape that White has is mostly alive, somewhat thick. There is a bit of an issue in that after the AB exchange is made, there's a weak point in White's shape at H2. So if Black manages to get strength around L3, L4, that attachment makes White uncomfortable locally. But White can usually develop the shape into territory without, like if we imagine the M4 stone isn't here for a second, and we'll even remove this sort of exchange. If we imagine the shape like this, White has a very strong claim to the bottom because Black made a bunch of exchanges at the corner that made white's group very thick and very stable. And if black blocks this way and white gets to connect back to the corner and black takes the bottom, then the M4 stone is for the most part irrelevant. And at the point where white ends up extending, the Aji of that stone is gone and black doesn't get any future follow-up value. So you're really just comparing this result, like these two results, to the standard result that we expect to get, which is usually this one. And you're seeing how the end shape plays with the A and the B area. And you're picking the one that you would choose based on what you're trying to do later on in both of these spots.
Okay. Give me control. Okay. So we're choosing one of these three moves. And Chris, what you're doing is something that I would probably say 6 down on up must do, which is a whole bunch of look ahead, reading all this stuff. I hate that. I hate it.
Yeah.
I have no interest in it. So for me, A and B can get complex because of the Aji there. How about C? Oh, done. That was easy.
Yeah.
So I find the easy path I can play at a pretty good level, just easy path. And every now and then, okay, I need to do a little look ahead, but I try to keep it as little as possible. At your level, you'd lose all your games. You must look ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So viewers,
it.
feel free to not do what Chris does. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
It's fun to hear about, but too hard for me. Okay, thank you, Chris. Back to you.
The easiest way I like to think about it is that generally if you're playing A or B, you're trying to get a thick position out of the A or B stones on that side of the board, whereas C doesn't necessarily, like, you'll get a strong position, but you won't get a thick position. Like later, black is still going to have a move like this to bother the corner. So we can't really say that the corner position is quote unquote thick. But if we compare that to white having this double approach jump in variation first, we'll just sort of look at this old school type of variation here. The white position is much thicker on the bottom.
Yeah.
So if you value that thickness, if that thickness is more important, then you can play this way and it's fine. On this board, I think black's thickness facing the left is probably more valuable than white's thickness facing the M4 stone. Because black doesn't really want to save that stone anyway, and that stone is good leverage for black to reduce you even in the face of white thickness.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just like when we think about it in a whole board direction sense, if black already has the Aji placement at M4, why are we going to choose A or B when that direction is subject to the Aji of M4?
Right.
You're choosing the harder path, but why? Like there would need to be a specific reason, like for me to choose it. I wouldn't play A or B. The AI might. I wouldn't. But the AI is going to have some tactical thing that it read 30, 50 moves from now.
Exactly.
That might
AI
tell it.
cheats.
That might tell it, oh, A is the best move because of some Petsuji in 67 moves. Didn't you see that? No, I didn't. So when you're sort of thinking ahead, it's kind of like I just assess the whole area and I go, okay, no Aji with C. If black plays again on the bottom, I don't really care about it, because there's nothing for black to build territorially with H3 anyway. I just defend myself, and then black didn't gain anything. When he plays this one, I can double Hane or extend, and I'm just alive. And what did these exchanges do for black?
Right.
Absolutely nothing, except maybe create a group later that I get to chase for the heck of it. It's just not valuable for black to play there. So white removes the value of black continuing at the bottom side inherently with this direction anyway. It's just easier for white.
Okay.
I think in the game one you played the connection, white jumps. The connection is a bit old school. This one is a bit more modern, but it's subject to white's probe of extending because the stone at c9 is one space further than normal. So maybe black didn't like that, and black chose to connect instead. White got the jump, and then black played the fixing move on the top side to preemptively get ahead of the cutting weaknesses with A.
Uh-huh.
It's a very thick move. But now that the thick move has been played, there's really only one question left on this board. That's going to be the white C stone.
Yeah.
So again, we arrive at a situation where everything has sort of settled out. Now there is nothing left to do, no more pressing questions to be asked. We return to the opening, and Bill Lin gets the last opening point. At this point in the game, I felt if black needed to make the A for B exchange, this result should be out of the opening, slightly better for white. Black started with the first move, and usually black is the one that can take the last big place with initiative, and black sort of lost that with the A-B exchange. It was a little bit slow.
Yeah.
And but it was also a bit necessary, because if black does approach white, then black has to deal with the consequences of things like white's turn, white's cut, white's push. White's going to have much more pressing things on the board than passively defending stone, per se. So
Okay. So earlier in the game,
Mhm.
black left the B cut.
Yep.
So 2 questions. Question 1. Black's fixing it now.
yes. Mhm.
So black's thinking right now, I don't want white to cut, but it's okay for white to cut earlier.
Yes.
I don't understand that.
Because black always had the trade for the white D stone earlier. This D area wasn't settled yet. So if white did cut, black could try to switch, settle the area quickly, and then return back to get the first move against the D. And that would give black an advantage there in the bottom left corner. And black is thinking, that should be even for me. That's an even trade. But once white took that trade away with this variation, black didn't have that luxury anymore of having that easy switch, something else to go back and get compensation with. So black therefore has to remove the threat.
Okay, so
Mhm.
go to the original when black left B
Mhm.
and have white cut.
Okay, so that was here, and black played here, and then we want white to cut. Do you have a preference on which one we look
Wait,
at?
go back to,
Yeah. This is where he tanukied.
is it?
Yeah, he ignored white's extension and played the jump
Give me
on the left.
control. Give me control so I can form my question here.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Boom, boom, boom. White can cut.
Yeah.
Black didn't fix.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
if we don't fix, so maybe we were there and I didn't know it. Okay, take it from here. What's black do? And then do the same thing
Mhm. Okay,
later.
so here we just play the Tesuji, this diagonal move. White can extend. But after this exchange, black is already alive. Black comes down and takes c3. And now
Okay.
the attack against c6 is quite severe. White doesn't have a chance to make an easy base or eyes locally. And the white stone, if it's saved, would be running. But the problem with giving the white stone up, like let's imagine white, I don't know, play on the bottom somewhere, and says, I don't want to answer this black stone. Black has a whole bunch of different things black can do to capture that stone on a large scale. And capturing A on a large scale is going to be bigger than white capturing B.
Okay. Now stay here for a second. The B stone is not captured.
Right, not yet. One more move.
Black's alive on top.
Mhm.
Okay. Now move forward to when black does fix, and
Right,
let's have him not
so
fix.
game variation. Let's say here, black doesn't fix
It's
and
not
black
fixed,
play away.
and we play whatever.
Yeah, okay, so we're here at that point, and
Okay.
black doesn't fix and white plays away. So now if we imagine, I mean, probably white doesn't cut in this case, probably white's going to turn and try to go after the whole thing. When black extends to fix the shape on the top, then white can aim to play something like this to stabilize and aim for k17. White switches from attacking the cut directly to pressing the group indirectly like this.
Well,
Trying
instead
to
of
get into
leaving
Slaney's
that
value.
weakness, why don't we
Mhm.
just play? Heck, I don't know. Let's just make it K17 for black.
This one?
Well, white turned.
Oh, white turn. Oh, so you're saying in this one, here.
That
then
leaves
this-
the weakness. No. You played a move that
Or-
left the weakness.
Oh,
Take
you
away
mean
the weakness.
oh, you mean don't extend, play this
Yeah.
one.
So where's
Okay.
what's
Okay,
the problem?
I'm caught up now. Sorry, I was misunderstanding.
Black
So
didn't lose Sente.
that's true. Black doesn't lose Sente.
What did white get that's so wonderful?
Let's see. Yeah, it's a very interesting question.
So when black went back and fixed, I'm like, what's different that now's the time to fix? Now,
Maybe black
intuitively,
was
as a
worried
strong
about-
player, I go, yeah, I would too. But I would be lost as to my reasoning. It's just intuitive.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe he was afraid of having to get into something like this. I'm not really sure
It's great for
exactly.
black.
I'm not really sure what Guan Yu read. Probably he's not going to go for this one because white's attachment's very annoying on the top. So he might be thinking about something like this, and then
And white captures the cutting stone. Or else why'd you do it?
I think white could play this one.
Great. Let's jump in the 3-3. I mean, is there a problem here?
It's hard to tell. I
I
think
don't see the problem with allowing white to cut.
maybe
Now, I know when black saves, black now has thickness and ability, and now white's the weak one. I understand.
Mhm.
It just feels a little slow.
Yeah, I might agree on that because I think this exchange, like I mentioned, this is the one where I feel like white got an advantage anyway. So
That's right. You were agreeing, saying white got a little much here.
yeah, but my presumption as to why he did it was because he didn't have the trade anymore. So I think he was looking at the trade of white cutting and getting to remove the connection of J15 and the bottom left were the Miai.
Yeah.
And I think he got stuck in Miai thinking, where once white settled one, he thought he had to go back and settle the other. Maybe
Yeah.
he didn't reevaluate.
Do me a
fast
favor.
enough.
Have it's black's move. Play F14.
F14.
This is something that when we fix the cut, all of a sudden we see everything's different.
Yeah,
White is having a problem because we fixed. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying now's the time to do it, but that
Yeah.
F14 shows, white does
Yeah.
have a problem. Black's move does create a future.
yeah. It's
Okay.
This is the reason why K16 is not necessarily slow per se, or at the very least, it's not slack. Because F14 is a really sharp move. I actually spent quite a bit of time. There was one of the Fordons that was watching their commentaries in the game, but they actually asked about this specific point during the game. They're like, why doesn't, because later what ends up happening, we'll just sort of jump ahead to when it became relevant. Black played the one checking exchange, which, okay, it's possible, but I actually don't like this. I'll get back to why I don't like this in a minute.
Sure.
But black chose this direction instead. This knight's move, and they were asking why didn't black just play this one? Because what ended up happening was black took g5 and white immediately played e13.
Yeah.
And white spent 0 time thinking about it. White just saw g5 land and immediately slapped the stone down and took away the f14 attack against the white group. So the question then arises, shouldn't this one just be better? We played A. And I was like, okay, on paper, yes, this should be the direction black goes for. And I think even at the point where it got played, the AI also agreed that this was the direction black should have gone for. It gets complicated when white finds the knight's move resistance, but if white does anything else, it's already better for black. So it creates a situation where you enter a very sharp line, but the onus is on white to play the sharp moves. Black just simply has to react.
Yeah.
This is a really good fight for black. And that's the benefit of having that ace stone. Now, sort of going back, I mentioned I don't like this exchange. The reason being is a black played a thickness, and this move is really close to black's thickness,
Yeah.
I don't really get why we're trying to close off territory on the top side. Like, this exchange is a positive exchange for white. Like, later, black had a ko. Like, there's a whole ko in this corner.
Yeah.
When black makes this exchange, there's not a ko anymore. So you're losing something. I'm not really sure what black is gaining.
Yeah.
We
And
can't
it's not
say,
even territory now.
yeah, we can't say territory because black would need to make these exchanges, or black would need to play this jump. And even then, if we're looking at it from the perspective of territory, how small is that?
Yeah.
Why are we playing a 10-point endgame exchange now? So I don't like the AB exchange for that reason. This is the type of thing that Q players, often they play it too early. They try to finish the area too soon. Don players, they tend to leave it open until it's way, way, way late. But I definitely think this is a case of this is not the right timing for this. I don't see where AB is positive for black. I feel like it's slightly better for white. Okay, yeah, maybe black is not losing a boatload of points here, but the fact that black lost a ko means you did lose something. And I don't like making exchanges that I know are minus exchanges. So this AB exchange, very questionable. And then this G5 direction, we should sort of talk about this this relationship here a little bit. Because this is a high-level concept that happens a lot when high-level players read, that Q players are often completely blindsided by. And this is the concept of danger levels. I have a weak group, and there's often two ways you can defend a weak group. You can defend a weak group directly, or you can defend a weak group indirectly. And the indirect defense is where this danger level concept comes in. White has a problem at B. There's a weakness there. Black can attack it. But if we think about how white might choose to defend B, what black is coming to the conclusion is white has an attack here also. Just to show, for example, white can jump around 1, and white is creating a small, it's not going to kill black, but it's a small temporary attack against black's 5 stones. Black is being surrounded. When you have two groups that are being attacked, like both players can ignore and attack the other, that type of situation, the player who's got the bigger group being attacked is often at a disadvantage and has to return to defend first. It's like a game of chicken. And this is that danger level concept. You attack my group, but if I have a weak group of yours that's bigger, my defense for my group will be attacking your group.
Okay.
And then when that group is settled, only then do I return to defend my weak group. And the goal is somehow during that attack, I will gain a benefit that will help me defend my group better, and I'll end up net positive somehow. Strong players don't necessarily read all of that out until they're 9P. But we can refer to it as there's a lot of stuff going on. Presumably, black didn't like white's attack at 1, so black played this move at A to remove that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, which is worth discussing because then players are going to look at this and be like, well, yeah, B does. Black really 7'd on. It's like, yeah, black is really 7'd on, but what black is thinking about is that once white initiates the counterattack, black is going to have to worry about E6, and white's going to get a lot of freebies outside. And those outside freebies are going to affect that fight in the top left
That
corner
makes sense to me.
in a positive way for white. So black was worried about that first, and black decided, okay, let me try to see if I can bait white into answering with the textbook move, right? I'm going to go back and play this move to remove white's attack, and if white does connect at A, now I get both.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, white can't connect at A. White had to defend, and that means at the very least, black got something.
Yeah.
Right. And so these moves should make a little bit more sense now for the players.
It does make more sense to me. I wasn't quite getting G5, but it's a strong defensive move as well as, I mean, you're basically getting M4 ready to move into action.
Yeah. And the whole time that this has happened, right, through all of these exchanges, it's been a half-point game. The game has been dead even, going up maximum of -1 +1 for both players. So even though there have been questionable exchanges, you know, we can make we can say, okay, question mark for black exchange, right? We can maybe say, okay, question mark, type of stuff, right? This question mark. The total value shift has been less than 2 points.
Yeah.
Both players are still playing at a 9-down level.
Yeah.
No one has given up a big advantage, and we see like this is the type of game Bill plays. It's very solid, very methodical. All the moves make sense.
Yeah.
Nothing overtly complicated. Both players just playing very principled Go and taking care of their weaknesses before they do anything crazy. But now, you know, White has a slight lead, so Black needs to make progress somehow, right? And Black chooses to make progress by doing the only thing that Black can do in a game of Go to make progress. That's take advantage of Black's initiative. And so Black goes on the offensive. Black was preparing to attack White with G5 and build a little bit the left side. And Black is making good on his threat to do that. So this move, very easy to understand.
Yeah.
For Q players watching, you might go, well, why doesn't Black take the right side? Doesn't that look like the biggest area? Black could play this move, but it would be slow. There's not really a meaningful follow-up in the corner that's going to work for Black here. Any invasion at A that might work for Black is offset by White's invasion at B that works for White. And they will just trade small areas that are equal in value, and the score will stay the same. This is a very important concept, this concept of Miai trading. So White is never worried about a Black invasion trying to take territory here because White already knows, okay, I'll give Black what Black wants and I'll take the other side and it's even. You know, strong players cheat like that. They sort of know the future. And the other reason why this is not so good for Black is because it would be a very strenuous relationship with Black's corner. It's very far away and it's much closer to White's strong corner, which would allow White sort of an advantageous pinch later in the game. So we don't want to rush to play a move on the right side because feeling is there's not work to do there. It's a bit slow. If Black's corner is strong, White's corner is strong, then the right side value is relegated to end game. And we don't really think about it until end game. At which point, Black is far more likely, if he's going to spend a move there, to not give White the bubble of space. Black will just go all the way up against the White stone and try to maximize the profits with something just to show the full end game. Black would try to get something like this.
Chris, if Black were to play, say, O15, then would that make it more likely for White to play on the right?
Not necessarily, because O15 doesn't fix Black's problems entirely. So if we imagine White ignoring and doing something like this to keep Black pressed down, and Black goes to play something like this, at any point, White can attach and cut. So your O15 move did not stabilize all of the Aji in this area.
Okay.
White has attacked it here.
But in principle, if you played a move that did get rid of the RG on the top, then White's can be more going to suddenly want to protect.
Yeah. But the problem is any move that you do, for example, like this, that would do that, is also removing any invasion potential of this stone also. They're connected. Like we see if Black tried to invade now, Black is never going to be able to connect backhand with. It's just not going to be possible. You won't be able to get the tripod group in any meaningful way here. If we sort of look at something like this, how is Black going to live in that shape? It's dead L. So the invasion is just gone if you defend the top side in a way that creates the thickness necessary to remove White's tactics. They're connected. This is why this corner defending shape is considered resilient for White and why top pros played it for the last 2 decades. Because it's much harder to get into the corner and take away the topside variations, as opposed to if White's cornerstone were, for example, here or here. There's a little bit more Aji in the shape if it's the diagonal or the knight's move. But when it's the one space jump, no. There's not really a way for Black to do that. But good question. So Black goes on the offensive because there's really nothing else for Black to do here. Black needs to make good on his preparation, right? Black has now spent 2 slow moves at A and B, or slower looking, right? These sort of concentrated, thick moves. In preparation for the attack, Black needs to get some return out of these. If these 2 stones become stones that have done no work, then they're going to be minus exchanges over the course of the game, and Black cannot let that happen. And now white has a very important question. We go back to our list, is white okay? And that's a very hard question on this board to know if A is actually okay or not. It requires a bit of reading. If you're unsure, I would recommend just defend the weak group. I don't think it can necessarily be bad here. You know, you can, for example, turn and then jump. Something like this will be good enough. You're alive. There's never a risk. And yeah, black got 2 stones, but their direction value is not very impressive because white is already strong here. So black cannot expect to make a big territory at the upper hand center from this one. He'll get some points, but it's not a lot. In the game, white did his calculation thing and determined, I don't think black's attack is severe enough. So I'm going to take the biggest side of the board, again, using that attachment that we looked at. If black has no weak groups, white has no weak groups, then we should look at the big place. White could play any number of moves on the right-hand side. Strong players, they use a concept called, I think the Koreans have translated it as they don't like to leave quote-unquote bubbles or space between enemy stones and their stones. Moves like B, C, D, they leave space between black and white. So if you're going to play there, and rather than leave space, go all the way, try to force the opponent to compromise locally. And white just said it.
Why,
Nice.
Chris? Is that just because we can get more if we press right up against our opponent like that?
You limit black's potential counter responses.
Yeah.
So if I play B, right, black has
It's
the
a
chance to jump into A, B, C, right? Black can do any number of things to separate R9 from R14. And if we look at white's follow-up against the corner, white stones are also disconnected. They're not in a direct relationship. They have a shape that can be stressed and cut apart. As
Okay,
opposed to
but
something
you're-
like this, if black pincers, white's follow-up is much more severe. For example, we can think something like this, and then maybe even we play some sort of attach and co. And by creating this more concentrated local fight, black's options are a lot more limited.
So
Okay,
a forcing
that I
move,
understand.
a sente move versus a gote move, really.
Mhm.
Yeah, forcing moves, very useful.
Right. So
But
white
is
is
that,
just
is that also the reason why you don't want to leave spaces in between groups? For example, if white plays R11, is it just a Sente Gote thing?
yeah, right. It's gote, and then now you have this lingering endgame question: who's going to get to the vital point first? Right? Like later, if black gets a sente, black can strike A. In endgame, A is quite big, right? But if white got sente in the endgame, white can strike B. For white, that's quite big. Why allow it at all when you can just settle out and then you never have to deal with that endgame weakness or the counter-attacking options, and it's just overall much cleaner for white.
Very nice.
Right? So this is a thing that AI has sort of agreed with the Korean players on. They've been doing this type of play for a very long time. A good example of that is like when we would see this sort of pinch Joseki back in the day. This one was the most common move, right? And then when white would come in the corner, black would bother the spacing, and we would get this sort of variation where there would be some ladder breaker and black would capture. And then the Koreans come along and they innovate it and they go, no, why are we leaving space between stones? Just attach, duh. Right? And it's because, again, it limits white's options. Like white doesn't have the same type of counter-attacking things, and creating a direct confrontation is easier actually to handle than leaving space and creating multiple weak loops. So the AI sort of confirmed that theory that these attachment moves tend to be more efficient than leaving the space. I know that was a lot, but sort of getting back to the game now.
Yeah.
Sort of getting back to the game. Black's compensation for white taking it is that black gets to get to Q2 first, which in this corner, it's always sort of a contest of whether white's going to get the knight's move at 1 or black is going to get the jump at 2. Black getting 2 keeps the game in balance. This is black balancing territory.
And again, makes that M4 stone really interesting.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because white's next move removed that interest.
Uh-huh.
Right, and you can see how the strong player brains, this is for chat, right? How the strong player brains are churning The minute Lance saw Q2, his eyes immediately dart to M4, like, ooh, there's something there, and white immediately snuffed that out.
Yeah.
And so white is playing, it's very defensive. This move is very slow. That's the first thing we have to say, because it's purely a defensive move. It doesn't offer any continuation value to white. There's no follow-up to this move at all. But that being said, the difference between white getting L4 and black getting L3 after black has played Q2 and removed white's monkey jump to get eye space is actually very big. It's like if white tanuki'd and black got to play something like this, the cut is not really a ladder anymore. And if the fight continues somehow, this stone could represent possible connection. It could represent jumping in, destroying white's eyes. The whole white group can begin to suffer if a fight like this breaks out in the future. So it's really solid that white sort of foresaw that possibility. And white's like, well, there's nothing else going on the board. Q2 is in parity with my Q11, so I don't have the onus of matching black's move. I'm just going to take this timing to remove black's future sentes, and that in and of itself should be profit.
Yeah.
Right. That's hard for a lot of players to understand, that simply removing your opponent's options is also a form of profit. And AI might not think it's the best move because it's very slow, but at the same time, it's a very powerful move for white.
Yeah.
Not being botherable on the bottom side of the board is going to sap a lot of the additional value that black would have gotten out of these stones. Because remember, we still have a lingering fight at A. Now, white is saying, in the meantime, I'm okay, but we have to be conscientious of the fact that that group is either running directly south, or that group is going to start going towards the southeast. And white being strong in the southeast is going to be critical for this fight. If white was also weak down here, black would be able to split two weak groups.
Yeah.
And that would be a losing formula for white. So black and white are just trading big places now. They're playing endgame at move 60.
Yeah.
Well, that's effectively what's going on.
So we're coming up on we're on an hour now, and I have to get on with the rest of my day.
True.
So let's pause it here. And if you think part 2 would be good for next week, we can do that. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah. I think because it's a good example of patience, because soon black does go on the offensive. Black can't stay off the attack forever, right? Both players are in this mutual truce right now where they're finalizing endgame places of other boards early on. But a lot of why this is happening is because black is trying to eke out additional strength towards the weak white group, and white is trying to defend the areas in such a way that if that white group has to run, white is not going to suffer multiple burdens. And I think that's valuable.
Yeah. A
lot of low-down players and high SDK players tend to get in this situation where they look at the game through a telescope, or like through a scope, right? Like a lens, and they don't zoom out enough to see the big picture of how the rest of the board is going to play in. But we see white being very conscientious of that, and very often playing these slow, solid moves. But it's because white is anticipating black's attack. It's a really good example of how you can effectively shinogi in a game of Go.
So viewers, I hope you're looking forward to part 2. We'll do that next week.
Yep.
Chris, thanks so much. Yep. I always feel kind of guilty when we take up your time. It's so valuable.
That's all good.
It is good. It's very, it makes it fun. Okay, viewers, thanks a lot, and we'll see y'all later.
So if the recording is over, I have